back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. And yet again, we've got our favorite guest, George McMillan III. Welcome back, George. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you back. It is always an interesting, journey with you here. Not only through the slides, but also through the comments afterwards. And we wanted to take a moment to address that. And let me begin by I rarely go full screen, but this time I'm going to go full screen. And that one guy in the comments on George's videos and on my videos, unless you've got like $10,000 to $30,000 to like help us, get the media up to par and the entertainment and the writers hired for this show, just leave a like. Everybody else, like, share, subscribe. This is the worst comedy show on YouTube and the most boring PowerPoint slide set ever created, basically. But it is well worth the time. It is well worth the time because it's information that you won't get anywhere else, basically. And definitely not explained in like such a clear way.
Well, I'm the only one that's doing a post-Mackinder Heartland versus Rimland, sea power versus land power strategies updated in a modern Comesian dime asymmetrical symmetrical SWOT format for strategic planning. That's the methodologies behind it, and there's a tremendous amount of economic and political development theory I throw into this. So this is the only program that's that level interdisciplinary. So this series here, different than it's much different than the one with Matt Bracken, because this one focuses on just a geostrategic theory, and the analysts don't like it when I'm interrupted. They just want me just to go through it so they can focus on the strategies, because they're already familiar with one region of the world. They want me to show them the similar patterns in the other regions of Eurasia is what they want to see. So they want to see me just slam through it with as little interruptions as possible.
And that's why I don't contribute, quote unquote, that much, because as a favor to George, I'm keeping as silent as possible. But due to the platform that we're on, being YouTube, we have to make it a comedy show. Otherwise, we're going to get banned, basically, because speaking the truth these days gets you, at least shadow banned.
Getting banned from YouTube is like the least of my worries.
That's why you've got the academic thing. But like in order to like timestamp it and everything, I've got to be at least attempting to be funny so that I can pass this off as a comedy show. So like, share, subscribe to your friends who like geopolitical humor and analysis that you won't find anywhere else. Today, like before, we're going to be talking about hemming in of Russia through geopolitical means by the EU, NATO, and everybody else, basically. George, we're at part 3 of our 150-slide presentation that you prepared for us. It used to be 150. It's probably longer now. You keep adding slides. We're at 63. Oh, yes. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah. Every time I start, finalizing them and then adding all the citations, it grows. I think it's up to 180 or 190 now. So I don't know what it's going to top out at. But yeah, the purpose of this show, and I do not have time to do both a general audience talk show and also a strategic analysis lecture. I only have time to do one or the other. So I got to do the strategic analysis show because I need my stuff copyright, time and date stamped, because I have other material I'm trying to publish and academic conferences I need to go to, and there's just not enough time to do everything. So that being said, we're getting into part 3 here. We started out with Wesley Clark's his video from 2007 where he's talking about a small group of people, and he even names PNAC, the Project for New American Century, and Wolfowitz and Cheney, and some of those people, as far as taking a policy coup that not only lasted during the Bush administration but carried through the Obama administration also, and then on to on with Trump. And he was just talking about how nobody voted on this. It was never debated.
Mm-hmm.
People don't even know what it is. And another thing that I've been talking, well, a lot behind the scenes with a lot of people, including Matt and Michael Yon and some people like that, was this small group of people comes out of the grand strategies classes. Principally, it's at Harvard and Yale, but it's Princeton, Cornell, and University of Chicago also. And then there's also a lot of economists that are into some of these groups. But yeah, there's a very small group that actually gets in the intel community and actually runs it and makes that decision, and is making the policy decisions that aren't debated. And like we said in all the other videos, we're about informed consent and just discussing where this academic literature comes from, what's their beliefs, what's their end game, because I do rational actor belief preference constraint models.
That's too many words. That's too many words in one sentence. You want to clear up what's rational constraint? What did you say?
Oh, rational actor belief preference constraint models.
Yeah, what does that mean? Clear it up a bit for those who are not that well versed in that, because that is what you're doing.
Yeah. Rational choice models, the field of economics uses them. If you want to do something, then what series of steps would you get to go from A to Z, from beginning of the project to completion of the project? So then when you do a rational choice model and you're talking about governments or groups,
mm-hmm.
and what they're trying to achieve, and especially ideologies or religions, then you have to add the belief preference constraint caveats to it. So you take someone's beliefs, they believe if they keep on pursuing a course of action, they'll get some positive outcome at the end. So then whenever they're confronted with a set of choices, they're going to make their preferences congruent to those beliefs. So you're going to have preference consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows you to add some predictiveness, knowing their beliefs, what they're likely to outcome, or what they're likely to do along the way at different junctions.
Mm-hmm.
And then their constraints, money, finances, warfighting material, productive capacity material, just any kind of resources that you could use to achieve your objectives. I was talking about the northern countries tend to have a secular society, so the belief preference constraint models are more utilitarian. Then when you're talking about the Middle Eastern Islamic groups, then you're very much into beliefs first. And then they try to get resources and constraints second, where in a utilitarian secular society, you usually get your material, they're usually more materialistic. So you get them, they're usually focused on materials first. And then beliefs come second. So you do, when you start to do strategic plans, I do them differently for Middle Eastern groups than I do for Northern countries or that I do with China. I do them actually kind of backwards. I do the flow charting backwards, basically. So,
speaking of your work, I want to address something else that was in the comments. At the onset, when we started the series, or even when you started this analysis before you even thought about getting onto YouTube, or before I even thought of becoming the working brother, you thought about like giving out these slides for everyone. But recently, considering how much time it's taken and how intricate they have become, you've decided to basically hold on to them until somebody comes along and wants to support your analysis in a more significant way. Is that correct? You want to speak a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I've been pulling everything off, and I'm in the process of organizing it for books. So that's
Cool.
why it has to stay kind of proprietary until then.
Excellent. So basically, this is the only place you'll get it, and on George's channel, which is where you might be watching this, because it is often copied onto there. All right. Shall we get right into NATO and the Warsaw Pact? Or do you have
Yeah.
anything
Okay.
to finish?
So I just wanted to remind people that we were in the first part. We started off with Wesley Clark's video, and then we had a quick mention of the Bill Crystal video with Ann Applebaum, but it doesn't matter. We covered that same topic with Rex Friedman and Fiona Hill, where they go on for 3 or 4 hours just gaslighting the American public that Putin needs a psychological evaluation. They run the narrative of he attacked for no reason, and it's like it's such nonsense. If you do a geostrategic analysis, the 2014 Euromaidan revolution was meant to take over the Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol and take over Russia's only warm water port in Rostov-on-Don. I mean, and the U.S. Navy, who studies all these waterways full time, ever since Mackinder, Speakman, and Mahan, of course, they knew full well what they were doing. So the nonsense that it was unprovoked, it was inevitable. Wesley Clark talked about how not only it was inevitable and understood, but Bill Crystal talked about it in the Weekly Standard all the time. So it's people can go back and check the facts if they want.
And we've got a video that we linked basically every single video that we ever made, which links back to that Russia is unprovoked, where we went into deep details about how Russia is unprovoked, and it's all propaganda from evil Putler. Keep going, George. Keep going. Shall we get into the slides?
So this slide set, we're getting. With the 1 year anniversary, I happened to find this. It was the 150-page slide set that I had actually done June before I went back to Thailand to do my motorcycle trip, and I just ran across it. So I just updating it, and now we're doing it. It's actually been sitting on my computer for a long time. So we want to get through this slide set and then get on to some more, because we need to start getting more of this stuff out there, off my computer and out there. So so we're getting into slide 63. This one's got a map from The Economist. And the map on the right has the original Warsaw Pact countries.
Mm-hmm.
So you have East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, and Albania. The Balkan countries, Tito had that independent from the rest of the communist movement. They might be allied, but they weren't in lockstep.
Yeah.
Austria, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland were neutral, as was and still are Finland and Sweden. So that they had the neutral countries, the critical neutral countries were Austria, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. If you look at the map on the left, it's got the original Warsaw Pact, NATO countries in dark blue, and then the lighter grayish blue countries were the ones that were added. So, as soon the Clinton even though Gorbachev and Baker promised Russia that NATO would not expand towards Russia 1 inch farther, it is during the second term of Bill Clinton. They moved NATO into Czechoslovakia, and then Poland, Lithuania, Latvia. Slovakia broke away from Czech. and then it moved into Hungary. But when it moved into Romania in 2007 and Bulgaria, they moved in there quickly because there was an emphasis on controlling the lower Danube. Now, when I gave my pipeline analysis of why the Nord Stream blew up, they also stopped. The United States started spending more money in influencing the politics in Bulgaria to stop the South Stream project from ever developing. And they also want to control the lower Danube River, because if Russia is going to send oil up and through the Danube River, the United States does not want anyone to start paying in rubles. They're trying to protect the petrodollar. That's the whole goal of this. So even the countries where, they didn't flip the elections in Belarus, the color revolution was stopped there for good or for bad. But in the Ukraine war, the emphasis there is to control the pipelines. They wanted Poland, Ukraine, and Georgia as match sets to control the Druzhba pipeline going through Belarus, Ukraine, and Poland. And they wanted Georgia because then they can control the Caspian Sea pipelines coming from Baku into Georgia and either through Batumi or into Kars, Georgia. And Fiona Hill in 2003 did a paper for Brookings Institution about building their own pipeline from Batumi, Georgia to Burgas, Bulgaria. When you redirect,
you're saying this Georgian stuff that's happening now is not coincidental, maybe?
Oh no, they back in 2003, back in 2004, they heavily backed Saakashvili.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't gain the control that they thought that they would, but they're trying to move the needle again because you have a lot of Russian speakers there now that just moved in, so they're trying to use them. But I want to stay away from that because, again, we want to work around Eurasia counterclockwise.
Yeah.
So we will. Yeah, that is a current event, but we have to get to that another time. This is a strategic analysis show, not a news show. So
I just thought I'd get your take. Get your take on it because you know a lot more history than most people. The U.S. out, Russia in, and Germany up.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we went over that. Yeah, the U.S. had a choice of perpetuating the same old geostrategic relationship with Russia as the old Soviet Union, or risk taking a back seat and letting the European Union move east and integrate with Russia. So in this case, had NATO stayed the same size and shrunk, then the natural inclusion would be that U.S. I called it in the other sections, in the other videos, the global political center of gravity, because if it shifted, if you have Germany integrating, the biggest industrial power with Russia, the biggest energy, cheapest natural, because natural gas is extremely cheap to send through pipelines. So it is the cheapest form of energy out there. And Russia's got a ton of it. So if you put the biggest, cheapest energy supplier in the world together with the biggest industrial power, Germany, and they started to integrate with pipeline infrastructure, the railroad and highway infrastructure follows, then the diplomatic and military integration always follows after that. So you're into diplomatic, infrastructural, military, economic. Those are the instruments of national power, of how you start to judge A, how powerful a country is, and B, how they're integrating with infrastructure and with allies. So it's also the strength of, it also measures in strength of alliances. So in this case, had that happened, Russia would be in Europe. Germany and the German world would be up in Europe because their economy would expand because their industry would be getting cheap resources, so their goods would be cheaper on the world market. So you have high quality goods at a very competitive price. They become a major power that shifts the global center of political gravity from Washington and London to Berlin and Moscow. That's the goal here. So yeah, Russia would be in, Germany would be up, and the United States would be marginalized or pushed out. Because the Alex and Alexander always talk about and use that phrase. I hate to rip off anybody else's phrases, so I always do my attributions. Also, okay, so getting to slides at 66. As NATO expanded eastward, it had to keep pace with the EU, because theoretically you could just move the EU, and I've been arguing this since last year on the Felix Rex shows. You could just move the EU east without the NATO military component, and everything would be just fine. Then you would have Germany and the German world not only connected to the gas suppliers in Russia, you would also have them connected through Turkey to the Caspian Sea energy suppliers. So it would have been Russia and the central stands integrated with Germany also. So it's to keep the United States in every single one of those areas. Otherwise, the United States is isolated in power center number 6 in my previous maps.
We'll leave a link.
Yeah. All right, let's go to 67.
Chinese expansionism.
So this slide starts talking about actually before the Soviet Union collapsed, China started abandoning its non-market communism for a more centrally directed or dirigist economy that's centrally directed, but it's not a barter economy anymore. It gives the local shop owners and the businesses a lot more leeway to make their own decisions. So it's liberalized a lot. So as soon as they started doing that, China started forging better ties with, all through Central Asia and Africa. In the other slide set that we did, it's the one I did with Monster. Actually, I don't think it's released yet. But the difference between the Silk Road project and the Belt and Road project is the Silk Road project is supposed to integrate China with Central Europe because they can get all the oil and natural gas they need from that. And then you have internal overland logistical supply routes, and it reduces their dependency on oil coming from the Persian Gulf that can be cut off by U.S. naval interdiction at Straits of Hormuz, Straits of Malacca. So then the Belt and Road Initiative then adds seaports in Asia. So you're talking about Chabahar Port in Iran, Gwadar Port in Baluchistan, Pakistan, Chakpu in Myanmar, pronouncing that wrong, I know. Then you're also talking about railway infrastructure and other plant and equipment moved to here in Thailand. And then next week, I'm going to go look at Chinese infrastructural projects in Cambodia and Laos. So the Belt and Road is to make it so the Chinese ships can take the shortest route to Asia to land, offload their cargo.
And let's take this moment to
a rail
remind
link that will take it.
Let's take this moment to remind everybody that George is on vacation somewhere in Thailand in a hotel and is trying his best with the best internet that he has to give you this information. So be patient. We had a little technical hiccup there. You cut out for a bit. So why don't you take that last sentence and go from there again, George?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I tried to hardwire in here.
Yeah. We know. Anyway. We have patience. Go on.
Yeah, so the Belt and Road Initiative, that's made to mitigate the time and distance that Chinese ships are in the Indian Ocean or in the South China Sea, so they can get to a port the fastest somewhere in Asia and offload their cargo into a rail link and either take that to Kunming or Urumqi, or offload their oil and had that go by pipeline to Kunming. If you're talking about Myanmar, they want to build a pipeline in Pakistan, but the terrorists will blow it up. That's a lot of people think that that's intentional. They also want to get as much oil and natural gas out of the Borneo area and be able to offload that into Cambodia. I don't think they have pipelines going through Cambodia yet, but they certainly have the rail links and the highways. And they're building a big naval base there. So they want to, the Belt and Road Initiative is to mitigate the time and distance that ships are in the ocean where they can dock someplace on Asia inland and then send their goods either by rail link or pipeline to China, so they're not going through any of the maritime choke points. And like I said, we'll do that. We did that video on Monster. I got the slide set. I'm upgrading it. We might have to do it again, something similar over here on Working Brother.
We'll see what's up. Let's continue with 69. Reversing the 5 power center doctrine.
Yeah. Oh, wait. No, we didn't do 68. But real quick, what do Russia and China have in common? And this is going to have bearing on the conclusion. We're going to do one half of this part 3 today, and then tomorrow we're going to do the other half. So if you let the EU integrate, to give the bottom line up front here a little bit, yes, you would have a strong US and a strong UK connected to a very strong Berlin and Moscow relationship. That would have also gave energy, because the oil and natural gas pipelines going from Sakhalin, and they're shipping it to Japan because the islands are right next to each other. You would have had a very strong connection between, a very strong alliance of US, UK, Berlin, and Moscow, and Japan on the Pacific. And they could have contained China a lot easier. But the United States doesn't want to share power, because then the global political center of gravity shifts. Instead, the United States, again, it's Wesley Clark calls it the PNAC crew, so we'll just stay with that. They decided that the United States should be the only sea power, the only superpower, and is trying to break up Russia and China. So it's a big gamble, because now the United States might be overextended in Afghanistan. Excuse me.
Take a break, George. How's the weather in Thailand? Is it always like 24 degrees? I've never been to Thailand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I figured it's like tropical all the time and humid probably.
Yeah, I got a sore throat last week, and to me that's my indicator that I have COVID, because I don't get. I'm not joking. I don't get any. I don't get any real symptoms other than a sore throat.
It's called a cold. It's called a cold, or at least it used to be called a cold. or the flu or something like that. In any case,
Yeah.
let's stick with geopolitics and keep out of conspiracy theories on this comedy channel.
Yeah. Oh well, anyway. The well, I'm just one of those people that doesn't really get any symptoms other than a sore throat.
I don't know.
We're getting back to this. Yeah. So the United States has a go for broke strategy, and anyway,
I've had
we're actually
someone describe it to me, like, and this ties into what you were saying before about the rationality of the actions of the opponent. That basically, like, it's a bar fight, and you're counting on the fact that the other guy doesn't want to hurt himself, and then the other guy takes a bottle and smacks it against his own head, and he's like, "Huh, now what?"
Oh,
He's
yeah.
he's not playing by the logic and the rules of the game, basically, you know.
Yeah. So
So you can't
in this
predict his
case,
behavior, basically.
yeah. So in this case, because it's a geostrategic show,
Hmm.
the options are the United States tries to be the only superpower and then tries to destabilize other people from emerging. In this case, it's economically is what you're trying to stop.
Yeah.
Or the United States could have let Berlin and Moscow, they could have let Russia into the European Union and integrate. Then you would have a very strong industrial powers in North America linked to very strong industrial centers in Western and Eastern Europe and in Japan, because Russia's got power, has natural gas and oil supplies from one end to the other. And then that would have been able to contain China. But now the United States is overextended and probably they can't take on Russia and China at the same time.
Hmm.
That's actually laughable at this point. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on because that won't make people very happy.
The comedy show. It's supposed to make them
Yeah,
laugh.
right, right.
Reversing
We're just
the five power center doctrine. This is basically what your six power center doctrine is it not?
yeah. So yeah, I gotta sit and look at this for a second because I did the video. Well, we did a video on this last week, and I did a longer video on it with Monster Consortium, and I think we may go back and hit that again because the original five power center doctrine
Hmm.
was done by George Kennan, I mean. He was the ambassador to Moscow in 1947. His original five power center doctrine was the United States, UK, Germany, France, and then Russia. And how do you get those countries to contain Russia in Eastern Europe? By the mid 1950s, that concept of the five power center doctrine had changed once Mao Zedong had defeated Chiang Kai-shek in 1949 and it became a communist country. It changed to kind of simplify it, that the United States would be in power center number one and would use the Marshall Plan to resurrect Western Europe in power center number three, and Japan in, the United States in power center number one, Western Europe in power center number two, Japan in power center number three, and then try to isolate Russia in power center number four, with China in power center number five. So that's where the history of that came from. And then this starts talking about the creation of CETO that then kind of became ASEAN to try to contain communism during the Vietnam era. And so, yes, in a week or two, I should be in Laos and Cambodia looking at the old CIA air bases in Laos and Cambodia from the 1950s into the 60s and 70s. Very interesting, by the way. I was looking at maps the other day, trading maps with
I saw that
Dr.
map you
Paul.
shared. It was pretty detailed. Interesting site. I'll have to look into it at one point.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, yes. Yeah. In the other videos, we talked about, not to focus on just the Ukraine war.
Mm-hmm.
The United States has destabilization strategies on every country in Eurasia. Brian Berdleck talks about he's been talking about Central Asia and South Asia a lot every day. But he talks a little bit about the infrastructural projects, but not enough. Well, in my view, not enough. He focuses on the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID and things like that. And he starts to name the leftist leaders, and then he actually shows pictures of them meeting with U.S. representatives. We'll leave it at that. So after the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan, India is furious because the United States not only funded the Sunni Wahhabi violent extremist organizations, the VEOs, back in the late 70s with Operation Cyclone, continued it in 1980s with, that movie Charlie Wilson's War with the Reagan administration. So we not only armed these people once, but then under the Taliban, we came back and ended up, by accident or on purpose, ended up leaving $80 billion worth of training and equipment because they were going to have this multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic Afghan army. And in reality, it broke up into ethnic and religious factions, with the Pashtun taking the lion's share of the weapons, and actually the Tajik Taliban taking the lion's share of the weapons up north too. So both those organizations are designed with a mission set of obliterate the borders between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and the borders between Afghanistan and Tajikistan, or Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, to recreate the Khorasan. We'll get into that more, but that is why India was absolutely and still is furious with the United States, because they think the United States did the hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan on purpose. So then the violent extremist organizations would have all the equipment to destabilize Iran and also to blow up Russian and Chinese infrastructural projects in, Pakistan and then Central Asia, all those places. So in May, Deputy Secretary of the NSA he's an Indian American. He went to India to talk to Modi's counterparts. He was not received well. That's Palki Sharma Upadhyay talking about threats and lectures. They gave nothing but threats and lectures to the Indian government not to go through with the INSTC. I've talked about that in the other videos. That's the International North-South Trade Corridor. It's based on Chabahar Port in Iran. They need to build out the port, which they've started, which the Chinese built a couple ports. India built a few more in the last couple of years. So it is running, it is operational, but they need the rail link between Chabahar and Kash. It needs to hook into the Iranian railroad system in Zahedan, and then it can also deliver goods into Herat, Afghanistan was the plan, because India would like to have more influence in Afghanistan and deal with the Pashtun and try to curry favor with them against Pakistan. So the United States is dead set against India trading its goods for they wouldn't be really selling gas through there because they would still have to ship it too far to run a pipeline, but they can certainly ship oil by train or by pipeline.
Okay.
Break.
Seems somebody hooked onto your Wi-Fi, George. I know you're not on Wi-Fi,
And
but
India.
yeah. Okay. Are you back now? I think you're back now.
Did it break up? Okay.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
that
let me
last
repeat that.
sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, what the U.S. through Dalip Singh, the deputy of the NSA, well, that's what it says there. Anyway, I thought it was from the NSC. Anyway, they want to prevent the international north-south trade corridor, and what it all boils down to is stopping Charbahar Port and the connection to a railroad. Because once the railroad is completed, I think it's 536 kilometers that's yet to be completed. It's not that difficult of a railway to complete, but then Russia is integrated with Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan on the other side, through to Iran, and then integrated with India with Charbahar Port. If they do that, then the trading for Russian oil is already being traded in rubles and rupees. That was done right away. Modi did not take kindly to Dalip Singh's visit and the threats in the lectures. And it wasn't just Wyon News that covered it. The Hindustan Times covered it also, and a few other shows. It was widely denounced on Indian news. So Modi then immediately went to Moscow, signed a deal to accelerate the INSTC. Now the trade is going to be in oil, and they're going to buy goods from India. But what the United States really wants to stop is a joint venture where the Indian companies start also building plants in Russia to replace the Western companies that left. And in actuality, a lot of the Western companies didn't leave. They're kind of hoping to stay in Russia. So the United States has tried to prevent Russia from using its oil and natural gas as an export-led growth strategy, an ELG strategy, to support an import substitution industrialization program, an ISI program. So you want to use an ELG program to fund an ISI program, and if they develop economically, of course, then their military gets stronger in the Clausewitzian terms. So the United States is trying to stop that, so that international north-south trade corridor, what it represents, is a deal for Russia to discount oil to India, and then to entice not only trade, but they really want to transfer of all these American Silicon Valley companies that have moved to New Delhi and Mumbai to actually hire their personnel and move them into Russia, so Russia can start accessing more industrial goods and more software. Russia already has plenty of software designers, but what they really need is electronics, automobile manufacturing, motorcycle manufacturing, things like that, Tata. So Russia has the ability to trade from its strengths of tremendous oil production and start moving these joint venture factories from India into Russia. So the United States is trying to stop all of that. So it all comes down to 500 some odd kilometers of railroad. And India has ignored the United States' request not to do that. The United States is angry. The American public does not know the extent that the American intelligence community has been supporting violent extremist organizations. Anybody can look up Operation Cyclone. It's on Wikipedia. Anybody can read Zbigniew Brzezinski's books.
Or watch the plethora of videos with George. There's a lot of videos where we discuss a lot of this in detail. We'll leave a playlist that starts with the psychological stuff and then it gets really deep.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to 71 then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here I'm just giving the background information. I already discussed the infrastructural projects, and previously in this video, and then all the other videos. So yeah, it just talks about how George Kennan started the 5 power center doctrine. So that's just taking the Mackinder heartland versus rimland, sea power versus land power strategies. Speakman really focused on surrounding the Soviet Union at that time and what they call the buffer zone countries in the Middle East and Central Asia, and in Southern Asia, and in the Indo-Pacific also. So Kennan updates it to because the Soviet Union becomes a superpower after World War II. But yeah, he went to Yale, and Speakman was a professor at Yale. That's where those ties come from. So okay, if that's the United States strategy, then what's China's strategy? Well, like I was talking about before, the map here on the bottom, I don't know if anybody, I have to see how well that shows up on your map.
I think
working brother.
I think it's visible enough.
It's really small, but those red lines going from China into Russia, and the Chinese started building or upgrading the old Russian railway system and building pipelines to the Caspian Sea area. Turkmenistan at first, because Turkmenistan can't export its oil across the Caspian. It can only sell its oil and natural gas to China, basically, because Iran sells the same products, so they're not interested in helping Turkmenistan. So yeah, China they started building to Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan first, and then after they built the pipeline, they extended them into Iran to help Iran to skirt sanctions. And yeah, once they get to the Iranian oil fields in the West Kurna oil fields, or actually the East Kurna oil fields, it's on the Iranian side of the border. Then China also has the ability to export the oil out of Iraq, because you don't have to move them that far now. So China has expansionist programs to go all the way in Iraq. Whenever I'd fly in and out of Basra Airport used to just always be, it would have a lot of Chinese people in it.
Good to know.
Yeah. Oh, doesn't everybody know that?
They're in there for the minerals too, aren't they?
Oh, I guess. Well, in Afghanistan they are.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, there's tons of them in Afghanistan, in the mountains. So now we're at 72. Yeah, I said we're going to go to 80 in this one, right? All right.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
We've been going for 48 minutes so far. Everybody who's still here with us, thank you for sticking along, having the patience, and wanting to learn. George, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is a geostrategic analyst show. It's so people can understand what projection analysis
comedy
is.
Show.
Oh, comedy. I'm sorry. So, because wherever these infrastructural pipelines are, you get a 1-to-1 correlation
somehow
with the color revolution.
I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, let me get through here. We've got a little bit of lag again.
Go on.
You have a 1-to-1. You have a 1-to-1 correlation with those color revolutions that Brian Bertolek always talks about. So you got the Chinese projects in Gwadar, Pakistan, in Baluchistan, Pakistan, and there's big protests there. You have big protests in Sistan, Baluchistan on the Iranian side also. So no matter where these projects are, there just happens to be protests, riots, insurgencies, terrorism,
human rights.
Well, I guess we should say peaceful protests.
Yeah. Mostly
Yeah,
peaceful. Is that what they call them in the U.S.? When there's like
mostly
burning?
peace. Yeah,
Yeah,
when they
mostly
burn down
peaceful.
cities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. You have Ali Veshi talking about with burning cars and buildings behind them that this is a mostly peaceful protest. Yeah.
Comedy, it's
All
not
right. So,
geopolitics. Significance of the infrastructural integration.
oh, well, okay. Yeah, this is just real quick. We already talked about the infrastructural project. Whenever two countries spend, billions, if not trillions of dollars over time on infrastructural projects, they are then married. So they don't want to let that, they spend all this money and they want to make sure it pays off. So once you have that kind of, and then they become, interdependent. They depend on each other. So yeah, whenever you get a big infrastructural project like that going, it means a deep diplomatic, infrastructural, military, economic alliance. I got to throw the dime acronym and again, because most people haven't heard of PMECI and dime. PMECI is political, military, economic, social, infrastructural, and informational. So whether it's infrastructural pipelines, railroads, highways, informational. Now it used to be just telephone wires, but now it's fiber optic internet or a satellite and encrypted telecommunications. So whenever people start spending large money on these infrastructural projects to improve one of those parts of the acronym, they diplomatically, economically, and military integrate also. Let's go to 73.
Russia and China and the bipolar world.
Yes. Okay. So, yes, the United States puts NATO, Office Security Cooperation Europe, foreign military sales, OSCE, FMS riders in the EU agreements. So when they're not expanding NATO eastward, they're only expanding the EU with the with just the NATO provisions in it. So it's kind of like a sleight of hand. It's something that they don't advertise, but Professor Stephen Cohen talked about it in his book that he wrote, that he published before he died a couple years ago. So in this case, okay, Why News with Palki Sharma Upadhyay is talking about how Biden announced a $150 million aid package for ASEAN. Let's back up a second. When I went through Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam back in 2015, the big deal was India and the West is trying to upgrade the roads and railroads going west to east from India, through Burma or Myanmar, through Thailand, into Cambodia, into southern Vietnam, to integrate those countries. India doesn't want to be locked out of, the old French Indochina. So it wants to integrate through infrastructural projects. The United States is also helping. That's significant because while the United States and everybody else and India are working on east-west infrastructural projects along Southern Asia, Southeast Asia, China is building north-south infrastructure to get to those railroads, pipelines, and ports because they want to decrease the time and distance that their ships are in the water, whether it's in the Indian Ocean,
Whether it's in the Indian Ocean?
China with north-south.
Whether it's in the Indian Ocean or what? You cut out for half a second there.
Or
Oh, no.
sorry.
Hello?
China's.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Are you there?
Yeah, now I got you. Stabilized.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to record from a different location next time. Unfortunately, by the time we find out I got a bad connection, it's too late to move.
It's time to record.
Yeah. So it's, again, I don't know where I cut off at, but India and the United States is trying to build, and the UK is trying to build infrastructure on east-west routes across Southeast Asia. And China, with its Belt and Road program, is trying to build north-south routes because its goal is to mitigate the time and distance. Its ships are in the Indian Ocean, or in the South China Sea, or in the Bay of Thailand, where they can get to a port and either offload their goods to a railroad or a pipeline. So in this case, the United States is countering Chinese rail and pipeline infrastructure and port infrastructural projects with their own $150 million aid package. So they're trying to counter that to stay in good favor with the ASEAN countries. All right, let me look at this for a second.
The petrodollar versus the petro euro and the petro ruble.
Yeah. So this is a map that shows the basic pipelines. We were talking about Mike Whitney's UN's article. He said this war, he wrote that February 14th, I believe, mid-February, about 12 days, a little bit less than 2 weeks before the Russian invasion. He says it's really not about Ukraine. The war is really about separating Germany from Russia and instigating trouble. It's a very well-written article that we covered it in a previous section last week. And this map is meant to show people what's meant by that. The Russians have been building, pipelines, more and more pipelines from its various oil and gas fields towards Germany. Well, since the mid '80s, when they blew up the pipeline with a software virus, and then later on, Alfred Herrhausen, the CEO of Deutsche Bank, was killed in 1989 with an EFP bomb, which is very sophisticated. We covered that in last week's videos. Okay, yeah, so this video is talking about, again, with that pipeline infrastructure that's in that map, had that gone through and it unites the biggest industrial power, from Germany to the biggest energy source, that not only shifts the economic power, but eventually that shifts the global political center of power. And what the Mike Whitney article was really, really succinct about, and I've been quoting it, through all 70 some odd slides that we've gone through so far, is he really nailed the fact that eventually they would stop trading in petrodollars and start trading in euro. And we've had this burgeoning debt for decades now. I think we left, Bush administration doubled the debt from 5 trillion to 10 trillion. The Obama administration doubled it from 10 trillion to about 20 trillion. And then it went to, with the COVID and the lockdowns and things like that during the Trump administration, it went from 20 to, we're up to 31 trillion now. And I've been predicting for years that we would hit inflation at 30 trillion. We have. And we're going to hit hyperinflation at 35 trillion. The problem with that is we weren't supposed to hit, according to GAO estimates, that's the General Accounting Office in DC, the United States wasn't supposed to hit 30 trillion until about 2027, 2028. we weren't supposed to hit 35 trillion until about 2033, 2034, depending on how things go. But after the COVID lockdowns and the massive spending, we're hitting, it moved it from 27. So we hit it in 2022, the 30 trillion mark. So yeah, it's moved. My predictions has moved it 5 years down, because I predicted the number. Because then how I come up with that number is that at some point the interest on our debt is going to start making it very difficult to fulfill our social services and our unfunded mandates. And at 35 trillion, if they raise interest rates to fight inflation, then you have to go to an austerity budget. You can't meet the social obligations of the unfunded mandates. The increase in the interest rate to fight inflation would then increase the rate that our debt escalates. So you start to run into a whole bunch of bad trade-offs. So this whole thing is, right now, the petrodollar system funds our debt. It increases the global demand for dollars. If countries exited the petrodollar, that would be dumping dollars that are external from the United States on the open market. If the value of if the demand for those dollars drops in the external overseas markets, what people with large amounts of dollars will do, well, then if they can only use them in the United States, then they're going to start buying assets in the United States. So then it becomes a bidding war, and they start bidding up prices. So then once this inflation cycle starts, it increases. It doesn't decrease. It starts to become a vicious cycle. Let's move to 75. Yeah, so that's why the petrodollar is so important, and why they don't want us to switch to a petro euro or petro ruble. In the other videos that we discussed, it just so happens that the United States attacked Saddam Hussein when he was thinking about trading. Well, him in Syria, Bashar Assad was going to trade directly in rubles for their oil and natural gas for the pipeline that goes from Baghdad to Damascus to Latakia and ends up in the Indian Ocean or goes to Turkey. The Middle East wars in Iraq and Syria started after they talked about going to a petro euro. And of course, when Gaddafi was talking about going to a petro euro or a
gold dinar,
the gold dinar trading system with Italy, well, then he got blown up. Again, this is just conspiracy theory coincidences, but the United States is very dependent. Well, let me put it this way: the more the United States debt increases, the more that saving that petrodollar becomes vital for our solvency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on slide 75. Yeah, so in slide 75, I want to make sure you're on the same one.
Yeah.
Okay, Eric Schmidt was the chancellor before Merkel. He signed a deal with Gazprom. Eventually, he went to work. After he was out of office, he went to work for Gazprom. He got Nord Stream 1 started. Merkel went ahead with it and completed it, and then started Nord Stream 2. Wasn't open, it was blown up. But again, that integration with the pipelines between Russia and Germany is really what was making, the Bush administrations and then Obama administration and then the Trump administration, now Biden administration, keep on warning the Germans not to do that. Otherwise, something bad, one way or another, Biden said he was going to stop it. One way or another, Victoria Nuland said that they were going to stop it, and it blew up. Again, they're protecting the petrodollar is what they're protecting. Slide 76. The debt Nord Stream 1 and 2.
Debt.
So, yeah, the importance of Ukraine, Georgia, and Poland is to make sure that you always have a U.S. middleman between Russia and Germany. So that's why the expansion of NATO into Poland, Ukraine, and Georgia was so vital, is to make sure that the Russians are always, or people are paying, or countries are paying for Russian oil and gas in the petrodollar, and you have very high transfer fees from Russia to Germany to make the price of the natural gas more expensive, and that way keep Germany from getting such cheap gas that they become that their industry becomes increasingly competitive. And also the United States does this. Well, you have Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma and Devin Archer. So the children of the politically connected are getting these huge salaries for no-show jobs through these ventures also.
Some crazy homeless guy told you, huh?
Yeah.
Surfers,
yeah,
surfers in Thailand, huh?
Yeah. Well, I hang out with interesting surfers. So yeah, the map on the bottom of that slide shows the major pipelines, and then you have the rise and fall of the U.S. national debt over 150 years on top. Okay, so we only got a few slides left. Let's try to wrap this up.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, just so people know that after the Yom Kippur War, the Israelis won it. They expanded into the West Bank and into the Golan. The United States stepped in and actually helped Israel with more ammunition. They defeated Hafez Assad in Syria. So then the Saudis started the Arab oil embargo in 1973. Nixon was desperately trying to end the Vietnam War with his Vietnamization program. Inflation was very high because of, it's LBJ's Great Society programs and increasing the Vietnam War was too much government spending and causing inflation. The oil of Arab embargo really exacerbated that inflation. Kissinger and I forget the name of the guy who engineered that. Was he from Lehman Brothers or Salomon Brothers? Started the petrodollar system. Can't remember. The guy used to chain smoke all the time. Can't remember his name right now. Well, I was only 9 years old at the time, so I kind of forget. But they started the petrodollar trading system, where all the energy supplies would be traded in dollars from Saudi Arabia. By 1975, all of OPEC was trading only in dollars. So you had to buy dollars. A country had to buy dollars to buy oil and gas. So however the United States regulated its monetary system and its interest rates, the other countries would then feel those effects. All right, let's go to 78. We got a couple more left here.
Yep.
NATO, the petrodollar, and the end of the five power center doctrine. All right, I call that. I've been calling that, on LinkedIn ever since I don't know, 2013 or whatever. The United States started making a series of moves that were actually pushing NATO NATO and the East, and the more Russia and China need to integrate infrastructurally over land to avoid, U.S. naval interdiction at the maritime choke points. We use that in the map and some of the other past videos. The viewers really need to watch the other videos, because this really is a lecture series that goes in step. Encirclement Russia and China pushes them closer together. Well, the Euromaidan revolution really pushed them together. Russia had spent a lot of money on the Yamal pipeline to increase the oil and natural gas going through the pipelines going into Poland, and of course the Nord Stream pipelines. Had they spent a little bit more money, they could have sent that oil and natural gas to Urumqi, China. They could have built that pipeline and been way farther ahead. But yeah, the more Chinese industry increases, the more their increase of oil supply and energy supply increases, and the more that they become susceptible to U.S. naval interdiction at Strait of Hormuz and Strait of Malacca. So then the more that they become susceptible to that, the more that they want to build pipeline infrastructure north into Russia and mitigate that to the extent possible. They've done that with Power of Siberian 1. Japan's trying to do that with the Sakhalin-Hokkaido tunnel project. The 3 major oil fields and refineries in Sakhalin are all complete. They've been running for years. They need that tunnel project. So all the countries in Eurasia are trying to do north-south infrastructure integration with Russia to decrease the reliance on Middle East oil, not because the Middle East is necessarily unstable, even though it is, but the biggest instability is if there's a war, the ships can't go through the Malaysian and Indonesian islands. Those are the choke points. And in the case of Japan, their economy would really crash if there was a war in the South China Sea. So it's pushing all these countries together. The more these countries all push together, like when we went over this in the videos about the 6 power center strategies, both on the Working Brothers show and on the show with Felix Rex. So this talks about, the U.S. eastward expansion to block a Russia-German integration might actually backfire and unite all these countries together. All right, so let's stop there. Let's pick it up at slide 80 next time. I kind of gave the bottom line up front of where I'm going with this, but we'll go over the particulars because people really need to know, A, the continuity of American foreign policy from World War II on. And actually, since I talk about Mackinder and Speakman theory, we're really talking about from the Great Game, from the mid-1700s on. Mm-hmm. It always has to do with blocking in Russia's ports. So let's just stop it there.
All right.
And
excellent.
We'll pick it up tomorrow. I got to add my sidebar citations and maps and pictures to finish the rest of this section, but that should take about 5 hours. And then we'll finish up section 3.
Next time, a bipolar world. Everybody, Thank you for sticking around. George, thank you for having the patience with my corny humor. Like, share, subscribe. Everybody, see you soon.